Jeffrey, thank you for being here. This is Destination Education, but this is a bit different. We normally have like heads of schools or educators, but I figured we all have had an education. So I think yours is interesting. I'd like to ask you, can you take us back and just tell us a little bit about your own education?
Well, first of all, thank you, Ruth, and big fan of you, and thank you for what you've done with our community. Jeff, I'm born and raised in Hong Kong of Indian descent, third generation Hong Konger. Grew up in a local school system, but very interesting. I went through something called segregated schools. So in the morning, in a primary school in Sham Shui Po, it was so weird. At 7:30 till 12:30, it was all local Chinese students, and then 12:45 we would switch over, and it would be all ethnic minorities that included Indians, Nepalese, Pakistanis, Filipinos.
Why was that? Was it because of the language? Switch to English?
That's correct. And I think that was, I studied during British time, 1990s. Apparently, they just didn't have policies for ethnic minorities for local Chinese education. So in primary school, they did give us a choice. They said you had to learn English. And then they gave you a second language of Hindi, Urdu, or Cantonese, because not all the Filipinos could do Urdu or Hindi. So my parents saying, hey, you were going to be in Hong Kong for a while. Why don't you just learn Cantonese? So from primary 1 to 6, I learned very basic kindergarten level Cantonese. And then it was time to switch to high school. In high school, there were only a few schools that again took in ethnic minorities. And I thought, now it's full day school. So surely they can't segregate us with the local Chinese. But they did. It was different floors. Upper floors were all local Chinese. Lower floors were all ethnic minorities. And this time they gave us 2 languages to learn, English and French. Now, in Hong Kong, I was thinking, why would we need French? So yeah, I think that created a huge generation, I would say a lost generation of ethnic diverse communities that just could not break through into local society.
So what happened before that? So did were your parents educated here?
No, they came in this, my dad came in the 70s and 80s, but he was already
Oh, so I thought you said you were third generation.
Third generation. My grandpa came here as a chef first, worked in a Farama hotel, and then my dad came in the 70s as a young person, started getting into the workforce, and then, married my
And you
mom.
were the first one to be educated here.
Correct.
Do you have siblings?
I do have a sister,
Yeah.
a younger sister, but she's now in the States.
Same experience.
So she saw that I was really faltering in the school system. So she literally pleaded with my parents saying, you need to put me into the international school. And then she went into an international school and then another route out, not the local system. But she did study very basic like me, primary, and then Form 1 to 3. So her Cantonese is also as good as mine.
We'll get into it later on, because I know that you support a lot of ethnic minority families who are in that sort of a school, but it's changed its policies several times, hopefully for the better. Hopefully there's been progress.
Yeah.
But I think the policies flip-flopped so much. I've read up a bit, this is going back some years, but the British government didn't quite know what to do.
Right.
I think it's a little bit like we're seeing, like, it's so sensitive, it's sensitive issues, but like anti-racism as what we're seeing now. But back then they didn't want to be seen to be educating Chinese children in English if that's not what they wanted. But then the reverse is you wanted to learn Chinese.
Correct.
Or did you?
So, most of us, I think, like you said, the British government probably had very different mindset on ethnic minorities. We were here, part of the British colonies, serving in the armed forces, in the police force, and then import-export traders. They probably thought after 97, when Hong Kong was handed over to China, they thought, these guys are not going to stay long. This is home for us. So they just probably didn't have, in hindsight, the policies in place for us, and probably thought, hey, that's for the Chinese government to take care of, or the Hong Kong government to take care of. So I think that was when, after 97, they realized, hey, there's so many of these guys staying. They need to be part of the workforce. They need to integrate. But no, they were still sadly going into gangs and drugs and unemployment. So it was a vicious cycle that just kept going until some civil societies like Unison and Fermi Wong and Christian Action, where I work for, started to push those boundaries a bit more.
So take us back. So you were in school, you were in secondary school. What happened then?
So it was weird because, again, the only reason why I spoke Cantonese was because we were forced to play football together. So the local Chinese and the ethnic minorities were in the same football team, and you needed to win. So then you start to learn English and Cantonese. So
that's really called an incentive.
That's right, exactly. It was really weird because, Ruth, I have friends who grew up with me from kindergarten, primary, and secondary. Till today, they don't speak the language. And we had the similar upbringing. It's just that mine was a bit more like, I need to learn Cantonese because I need to know what they're talking about me on the pitch, and they needed to know what I was speaking about. But
that's not weird to me, because for whatever reason, you were motivated and you had an intrinsic reason to be motivated. You wanted to win the match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, again, Ruth, I will say one thing about Hong Kong. It's weird because I know a lot of expat friends who tell me, Jeff, I gave up learning Cantonese on my second week or third week because people would,
Yes.
imitate
Intercept.
you and
Yes.
make
Yes.
make accents.
Yes.
And I understand that. And for me, like you said, I was determined. I don't care. I just need to play football. I want to get on that pitch.
Mm.
But I do have friends who say, hey, I've had a traumatic experience and I don't
Yeah.
want to learn it.
And I think that's different with Mandarin
Hmm.
somehow. And
Hmm.
we were just talking before we started recording that
Yeah,
Hong Kong is changing, of
it
course.
is.
Lots more mainlanders here. So you can actually move about day to day with Mandarin and
Hmm.
not even know much Cantonese. And I think there's a lot more acceptance of all sorts of different people being
Correct.
able to speak Mandarin and integrating. But
Hmm.
yeah, that you're right. There's something weird about Cantonese.
Hmm.
And then if you get your tone wrong, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
I'm fascinated by, I didn't expect this to go off on a tangent. There's so much that we can cover, but
absolutely.
I am fascinated by the fact that, ethnic minority children learning Chinese in Hong Kong who are born here. Can I just also ask you, we need to define, what do you mean by ethnic minority?
That's a great question, Ruth. I mean, it's interesting. You and I are considered ethnic minorities under the Hong Kong government policies, and that includes Japanese, the Koreans, which have a population here and a community here. But when you are mostly talking about the underprivileged and unfortunately marginalized communities, whenever we say or ethnic minorities, it's South Asians usually, Indians, Nepalese, Pakistanis, very a huge community here in Hong Kong, and historically been here for a while, but still on the margins of society, still doing your food delivery, still doing your constructions, or worse off if you see certain media, the way they portray minorities as South Asian gangs and criminals. And that's where we see still till today, society often, sidelines us.
But that is probably it's a vicious cycle,
It
right?
is. It
Because
is.
they're not learning
It's what I
Chinese
miss.
language.
Exactly. So again, why? Because whenever you needed to, you had your public exams, you needed two languages in order to get passed into Form 6 and 7. But when you're already failing one, there's no way for you to have upward mobility in
Mm.
the education system. So people keep saying, oh, you're lazy, your communities are all lazy. But I say, no. If you look at the US and England, many of the South Asians are doing well. If you look at the US, look at Google's CEO. He comes from the south of
Yeah.
India, where I'm from. It's, again, I feel like the language has been there to kind of be a really huge obstacle for us.
Yes. I've told you I went to school in the suburbs of London and I was pretty much the only
Oh my.
white child in
Are
my
you
class.
serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I use that as inspiration. So I went to school with Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Indians, and their parents didn't speak Chinese, English.
English.
But of course they did because they were integrated, they were immersed, and they were
Wonderful.
fluent native English speakers. And so when
Wonderful.
I put my children into Chinese schools here,
Yeah.
I used that as inspiration. And then I was surprised at exactly what you referred to earlier as the obstacles.
Yes.
All right, well, let's try and unpack it a bit. Now, you are currently working with a number of families. I mean, hundreds. How many?
Absolutely. We
Like,
serve around 750 individuals, so there are about 200 children that we serve, which some we've worked on together, and thankfully we pushed the boundaries on international schools to provide spaces for these marginalized communities.
yeah.
Uh, but again, most of us are stuck in the local education system, as you know, it's so highly pressurized already academically.
Yeah. And it's interesting since I've been doing this for about 15 years, the number of, I mean, this terminology like ethnic minority or expats or
Immigrants, yeah.
what do you prefer?
You know, so again, why as social workers we've been pushing this because we have fatigue with this word EMEC. Have you heard of that?
NEC, NCS, no? And
NEC is what the sometimes institutions like the police use on us.
what does it mean?
Non-ethnic Chinese.
Non-ethnic Chinese. Okay.
Yeah.
What's
So
it's
it's a lot.
factually correct?
It's a lot of this, right? So I think what we're pushing now is you've been probably hearing in the last 2 years, ethnic diverse communities, ethnically diverse communities. So it's just a push. It's not the most perfect word, but we're hoping in the future we could just all be called Hong Kongers. If I was to be in America or in England, we're all British or you're all Americans, but in Hong Kong, it's just weird thing, like you said.
Do you think that will ever happen?
I think so.
Do you?
I think so.
Within
I
the
think give it
next
another 5-10 years. I'm optimistic.
Let's take a quick break to talk about something that can make all the difference for your child's educational journey. I'm thrilled to share that this episode is sponsored by Top Schools, your trusted partner in navigating the complex world of school applications. If you're aiming for a top independent school in the UK, Top Schools offers personalised consulting to ensure your child finds the very best fit with a guaranteed outcome. From identifying those best fit schools to crafting standout applications to invigilating the entrance exams, the expert team is with you every step of the way. Ready to take control of your child's future? Visit topschoolsadmissions.com or click the link in the show notes to learn more and book a consultation today. Use the code DESTINATION for 20% off. That code is DESTINATION for 20% off personalised support for entry into a top independent boarding school in the UK. Now, back to our conversation.
I'll tell you a cool story. I was in Tongcheng in a supermarket a couple of years ago, and in front of me was a mainland couple buying lots of stuff, and then I was next in line, and then behind me was a pawpaw, and she had a couple of fruits, and I did what all of us would usually do. I'd say, "Pawpaw, 你行先, you go first." And you know what she did to me? She looked at me and go, "Ah, 香港人." And I
Oh,
got goosebumps. I said,
maybe.
"Okay, that's all it takes." So,
Yeah,
I think we just have to
maybe.
keep pushing.
Well, Tongcheng is very ethnically
That is
diverse as
true.
a
You're
community, so
right.
maybe
You're
they're a
right.
little bit ahead in terms.
Correct.
I think that the difference is Chinese, isn't it? Because ethnicity is so much tied up with the nationality. And like even the word for foreigner in Cantonese is Ngoi Guo Yan. How I can't even remember. What does it mean? How does it translate?
Outside of the country people.
So culturally, I think there's an additional hurdle there. But I hope you're right. Let's make it happen.
Exactly. And I think that's why we're still here in Hong Kong, right? I mean, people are saying there's so much movement out, but I think still Hong Kong is such a beautiful space and place, and there's so much hope
Yeah.
when we keep championing. And I think, yes, language is so important, but I'm also hoping that Hong Kong as an international city remembers to keep pushing the English part as well, because you look at around Asia, South Asia, I mean, it's improving. You go to Thailand, you go to Vietnam, they're picking up more English. And I feel like Hong Kong has this uniqueness that we can also emphasize the English part more and more.
I think I see that with the private education, the private schools, they're definitely supporting more of those private schools, which are not international schools. They're catering mainly for local and mainland children, and there's plenty of support for that. They recognise that a lot of families with means, that's what they want, and so let's meet that demand. But let's go back to, so you're supporting over 700, amazing work. We'll put all the links down below in the show notes.
Thank you.
What are the struggles that you're seeing with the children who are attending local schools? And let's define local schools by those that are mandated by the Education Bureau to use the local curriculum, but then there's some flexibility in which language they deliver that in.
Correct. You got it spot on. And again, that's where the problem is as well. I feel the challenge and the complexity is, Ruth, I've got a kid that comes from Tin Shui Wai, and I got a kid that studies in Jordan. Cantonese levels are two different worlds.
Which one's better?
Tin Shui Wai, because it's so localized there. Okay. You're in a community that keeps speaking Cantonese, whereas Jordan, as you can imagine, multi-ethnic. And again, the schools have different frameworks, different teachers. I always say the best thing is if teachers can teach Chinese as a second language. Just like if any person was to go to the US or let's say the UK, you would need to be taught English in a way that you're not a native. And I think that's what's missing in Hong Kong.
But those well, then that calls for segregation, doesn't it? No,
I think you don't need to segregate. You can put them into the same schools, and it's possible. If you know, there's a very famous reporter named Nabila. She's a Pakistani reporter, very famous in the last couple of years. If you close your eyes, you would not know how she looks like, but she's this brown-skinned girl who speaks Cantonese. And I asked her, how did you do this? She says, Jeff, I failed 3 times. I had to repeat so much. But then the school put the resources in and really handhold me for a while until I was able to do it. So it's possible. And I do see some kids now, Ruth, they come into me, they're these African kids, and I have this newspaper article, of things that we've done, and they read it off to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. So it's possible, but they need a lot of good work. And you can see one of the great examples of the police force. If you look at them, there's over 100 ethnically diverse police officers now. So one of the things that the police have done well is to lower the standards of the Cantonese required for the police force, which is now GCE Cantonese. Maybe they can do this for the rest of other jobs that you actually, to be a fireman, do you really need to read Cantonese? So I think there's all these obstacles that the government, I must say now in the last 2-3 years, they've been realizing that these guys are needed in the workforce instead of marginalizing and making more obstacles along the way.
That's interesting about the police force. So they've lowered the requirements, but then does that mean, practically speaking, that once they're enrolled, and presumably their Cantonese will improve pretty
Absolutely.
quickly
Absolutely.
once they're on the job?
Correct.
So
Correct.
it's the barrier to entry which is lowered,
You-
but they still recognise the fact that absolutely we need you to be on board to be fluent in Cantonese, and you'll get there, but you
Yeah.
don't necessarily need it at the beginning.
Right. But remember, when I was studying in school, we all wanted to be policemen back then. But then at that time, they made the requirements so high that you needed to have HKCEE Cantonese, which is impossible. And I guess for over 10 plus years, we were like not able to be policemen. I'm glad now we can, but I think we want that the government does this on all the major roles in society.
That's GCSE Cantonese, is
Yeah,
it?
it's
Like,
primary
it's
2.
very basic.
You're
It's very
right.
easy. Which level is it? Do you
I
know?
think it's primary 2 or 3 in Hong
So it'd be
Kong.
foreign language or second language.
That's correct.
They have different levels.
Yeah. Again, I'm not saying this is the best thing, but hey, once we're in,
Yeah.
it's on the onus of everyone, the individual, how much you want to pick up your Cantonese.
Yeah.
And I personally think if you make it easier, I'm sure more Hong Kongers would like. I mean, you look at YouTube, you look at IG, so many of the influencers are now doing in Cantonese, and they're not Chinese people. So I thought
Yes.
that's so cool. And
Yeah.
I wish the education system could be a bit more flexible and look at what are the current trends out there.
Yeah. What do you think about the education that you received and that the children are receiving now, apart from Chinese language, English, maths, science,
Yeah.
humanities, and there are some mandatory subjects as
Mhm,
well.
mhm.
How do you feel? Is that better?
I'll be very honest. I think they don't do enough cultural and, diversity and, just getting out of the classroom more, and I think that's why I'm so proud of what we do in Chunky Mansions is run these tours where they come out of their classrooms. And, the government puts so much emphasis on cultural education about mainland China, which is important. It is the motherland. But there's nothing about
No.
who your neighbors are. Or, hey, by the way, Hong Kong was a multicultural city over 100 years. If you come in, you've seen it, our timeline and all that. It really excites the kids. And I think they could do more of that.
Well, just explain for those that don't know, you run these tour groups for adults and children.
That's right. We do it for schools, corporates, and NGOs. They come into Chunky Mansion. We call it the Five Senses Tour, where you kind of see what the beautiful history, culture, race, and it's a bit of food tasting tour of Chunky Mansions because it's one of the most diverse places in the world. And once they come in, we bring them up to our NGO, which is Diversity Hub by Christian Action. And it's got a timeline and other cultural artifacts. You've been there, and I think you've seen how important that is for a space like that in Hong Kong. As much as Hong Kong is doing so much museum, emphasis, which is great, but I think these little community spaces are also something very important. So what I'm always challenging schools now is when they call me to come and do a PowerPoint presentation about diversity and stuff, I said, no, you come to us, get your kids out of the classroom. And I can tell you most of the times, no regrets.
Are they lots of different types of schools that are coming?
Absolutely. Back in the day, I would say primarily was international schools, private schools, and now it was just saying 2-3 months ago, I did my first kindergarten tour for these kids from a local kindergarten. I was really afraid because I just thought
lose them.
they'd lose me or they'd be freaking out. Who is this guy? But they actually had so much fun. They were so open-minded, and I thought there's so much hope for the city if communities like this can have more platforms for exchange.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. I'll tell you a funny story. I was at kindergarten the other day. Yes, it was a kindergarten. It was a private kindergarten. It had this whole simulation thing about going to the supermarket. And it was fantastic, but it was
Right.
quite complicated. And there was
Okay.
4-year-olds need to go into this simulation and then
gosh.
they need to use this gadget to point to that, to buy that. And I said,
Wow.
question, I said, why don't they just go to the supermarket?
Thank you. Exactly.
And her answer was that the parents were frightened to let them go because
Oh,
it was dirty. And then the conclusion was they won't ever need to go to the supermarket anyway. That's not a life skill that they'll need.
Oh my gosh, Ruth. You see what I mean?
People living in la la land.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had a good story about that as well. One time we did a tour and we had to take a bus and none of the kids knew where to put the money and they were giving it to the driver. And I thought, oh my gosh, which is why we need to keep pushing these initiatives.
Yeah. Tell me more about the children that you're supporting. Some of them are allowed to go to school and some of them are not. Is that correct?
Actually, the community that I serve on one side was the asylum seeking refugee community.
Mhm.
They can all go to school,
Okay.
but they can't go to university. But many of the government support is there, but they are not getting subsidies for uniforms, stationaries, and they can't travel outside with their schoolmates. So
Mm.
that's a bit of a
And they have
tough one.
no means to earn any
They're not
income.
allowed to work and
Mm.
not allowed to volunteer. So
Mm.
yeah, again, imagine that you're a kid from a refugee background coming into Hong Kong's already very, very complex education system. It's tough for them. That's why we do homework support groups and all sorts of Saturday weekend initiatives for them.
Yeah. And then the other, so the ethnic minority children, are they going to certain schools? Because there used to be these group of schools called designated
Correct.
schools. And again, the government flip-flops on the policy. What's it currently?
So there's no longer called designated schools. They're more EMI schools, English medium schools. So I used to go to a designated school, and then I think 2013, 2014, they stopped that policy. And
That was that long ago. Right.
but
But now we all know that that's the school that used to be the designated school.
correct, there you go. So what's happening, Ruth, now is still parents are encouraged to just go back to those schools because if
Mm.
you're trying to get your kid as the one-off in a local Chinese educated school, the school teachers will say, hey, we don't have the resources. Your kid's going to struggle here. You're not going to be able to follow up. And so what happens is they end up going back into these
Mm.
schools.
And what I'm hearing is that those schools, and some of them are now going even further to say we're offering an internationalized curriculum
Correct.
because they have that many ethnic minority children that
That's right.
they're feeling that they need to cater for what they're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they're not learning well. I
No.
mean, the teachers they're not trained. They're not trained in Chinese as a second language. They're also not native speakers of English. So I get the sense that a lot of parents are feeling like their children are getting the worst of everything.
Correct. And you're right, because parents are saying, hey, we're both working 2 jobs. We're not able to support the kid when he comes back with his homework. The kid's already frustrated because he's lagging behind. And mostly the schools sometimes are encouraging them, look, this is as far as you're going to get. Look at your plan B and C's, but they should actually work on their plan A's first. Put in more resources. And the government, to be giving credit to them, every year, if you look at the policy, millions of dollars.
Yes. And so there is some scheme where, and I've seen some schools seeking to attract more ethnic minority children because not that they can cater for them, not that they can teach them effectively, but because they get money.
Correct, Ruth. Now you're spot on again. And again, you're right. I wonder about these schools. Some of them, they're in the Pok Fulams and the far ends. They're busing them into, their schools. But again, just I've seen so much, I've had to deal with so many of the social workers in the school and feel like they have completely neglected the actual needs of the students. And it's just also, now many schools are at risk of closing. So
Yeah.
they're also then getting these guys in and they know ethnic minority communities, the numbers are not small. They're from 2, 3, 4 person households.
And I feel like from the middle class, there's a lot of families that I meet that could really benefit from a free education. It would
Correct.
ease their family life so
Correct.
much,
Correct.
but they're just not quite ready to, they feel like they have to scrimp and save and sacrifice to be able to afford
Correct.
the fees in the private school, which also might not be delivering a great
Yeah, so I'm
curriculum.
hoping that the government will see these are Hong Kong kids. These are kids that are going to be of asset and value to society, and to educate them good and well now is going to be,
All right. So let's put this to rights,
Yeah.
right? What do we do? What are the first 3 things that and you're currently in discussions with people I know?
I think, first of all, we're always hoping to having dialogue with the government. I think to have better frameworks in all the schools.
So is this with EDB?
EDB, with NGOs that are in these schools, social workers. And then 2, parents are so critical in this aspect. Again, I can imagine for parents to navigate the system is so hard. My parents didn't have all the support. But I must say now in this year, 2026, there's so many out there. There's, so much information out there, and it's just helping them navigate. And then for the kids as well, to just give them that there is hope, that they don't all need to be doing the same formulas that our parents and, maybe my generation was doing, is the food panda, the construction and the F&B. That's the mindset that they need to have a shift in. And that's why we do in the Diversity Hub, we have a youth training center where we're giving them soft skills, mentorship, and all sorts. And
Is that the general sort of culture that they think these are the sorts of jobs that they can aspire to have?
absolutely, because that was the ready-made. Just if you finish school very early, you're not doing well, it is construction for you. Guess what? That's $40,000 or $30,000, but it's hard labor. That's what your dad did. That was just a ready-made security, food panda. Many of my young kids, they're 17 and I'm like, hey, what are you doing now? What's your next plan for school? Oh, my dad already got me this food panda gig and I work 30 days, 29 days, 28 days, and I get $30,000. That's just what I'm going to do. But those kids could have so much potential to be much more than what they're doing right now.
Are you doing anything in the field of entrepreneurship?
Great question. Again, yes, a lot of our young girls, I must say, Ruth, the young girls are most impressive in my community. Now, remember when I was growing up at 17, they'll disappear and they're suddenly married off.
That happened to my friends at school.
See?
My friends at school are from very ambitious
Oh my
immigrant
gosh.
communities. They were going to be chemists and medical doctors and pharmacists,
Right.
and they did, and they went to excellent.
Oh,
I'm a
wow.
uni dropout. But they went to
Okay.
excellent. Oh, I
All
went back
right.
later. They went to excellent universities, and I heard, oh yeah, they got married off, and then
Yeah.
that was that. They have to stop work.
Right, but I must say here in Hong Kong, what's amazing is I think you guys as women are showing them that you could push those boundaries. And when they see people like you guys, they're going back to their parents and saying, let me just study my bachelor's and then we'll talk about marriage. And then guess what? They'll finish their bachelor's and then their parents tell their parents, let me just get my master's done and then we'll talk about marriage. So that's what they're doing. And if you look at many of the universities here in Hong Kong, they might have hijabs going on and they might have their religious attires going on, but they've actually are a great example that they push their parents to say education first and then we'll figure out the rest later.
I think in the tertiary, the university sector, there has been a new scheme, right, to attract more non-local. Is it non-local, which means those children who are graduating with something other than DSE? Am I correct? Do you know the details?
You are correct. Yeah. But again, it's a really non-locals means
I know.
international.
Well, in the field of international education in Hong Kong, mainlanders are non-locals. It's ludicrous.
It's so crazy.
I know.
Again, I just don't understand this concept.
Does anybody understand it, though?
No, Ruth. And that's why everyone's like, you're non-local, you're local, you're not. It's who defines it and why are we even doing this?
And then the other term that gets me is NCS, right? So non-Chinese speaking student, which is, I presume it's a non-ethnically Chinese child. And another story, I was having breakfast with a principal of a very, very prestigious bilingual school. And I said, my children were young at the time. And I said, I'm really hoping that they can become native speakers of Chinese. And he looked at me, he said, really, Ruth? Well, that's kind of impossible. And I said, do you sit next to Chinese parents of Chinese children? If they said that they wanted their children to be native speakers of English, would you say the same? But absolutely not.
Wow.
I keep coming back to this idea of Chinese. Is it because, Chinese is a very difficult language to learn.
No doubt.
You speak fluent Cantonese.
I do.
Do you read and write?
No. Well, it's a tough one. But again, it's not impossible. We do need the support. And I'm seeing younger generation now read and write Cantonese. I just got a new social worker I've met, and she grew up all her time in Yuen Long. She's Filipino-Pakistani, and she passed with high marks the DSE Cantonese, not GCE. So I said, how did you do it? She said, I worked hard. I got all the resources. Exactly.
No credit to her teachers, right? So she took that upon herself.
Exactly. So again, this is really sad when you tell me stories like this, because if educators are having this mindset, then how are we going to push it?
Yeah, I've got so many ideas running around in my head. There's this, have you heard the term languaculture? It was a book many years ago. It was a very non-scientific take on the fact that in order to integrate into the culture, any culture, you absolutely need to know the language. And so as we were just saying, well, the way that certain words in Chinese gives you an insight into the way, or phrases, into the way people think.
Well
so that's
said.
what languaculture means. And so I think that, obviously I moved to Hong Kong as an adult.
Yes.
I wasn't born here and I wasn't educated here, but my children were. And we took it upon ourselves. We thought it was nonsensical to raise children in Hong Kong and not educate them in the Chinese language. Yet we were the anomalies. Most of our friends at the time, and I'm going back a little bit, it wasn't even considered. And even in the international schools today, the amount of Chinese that they learn is pitiful, most of them. There are some great ones, but the demand is for more. But the Chinese is Mandarin, it's Putonghua.
Right.
But it's interesting, yeah. So languaculture, I was mentioning that. And then the other thing is the look. There is no other place on earth where you walk down the street and it's kind of automatic that you go, that person's from here, that person's not from here, just based on the way they look. But that's very much a cultural thing in Hong Kong. How can we... It's going to take a lot.
Again, I don't want to say this way, but I feel Cantonese just helps when you immediately start with Cantonese. Hostilities are just brought down, and I think that is one way that the local Chinese community sees that you are trying to integrate. May it be little Cantonese, maybe just 你好,我要凍檸茶, whatever they see it, okay, he's making an effort. And I think I also encourage the local Cantonese community to be a bit more encouraging, open, minded, that we are going to make mistakes. Remember, how many languages are we trying to balance out? There are going to be accents and all that. So I think when society feels that, hey, actually, you know what? We do need everyone to learn Cantonese, be welcomed in the city. And even if they can't, they're still Hong Kongers. And I think that is also an important thing. I mean, I'll have grandpas and grandmas from India. They're not going to suddenly pick up Cantonese. It's hard. But I think they also have to emphasize that Hong Kong is a global international city. If I was to go to Singapore with you, English is a norm. It's not like, it's Homa Fan,
Yeah, but Singapore is an interesting one. And I often do make comparisons, but
Yes.
Singapore is just so much more culturally diverse, isn't it?
I know, but why aren't, Hong Kong's always competing with Singapore. And I said, if they can do it, we can do it too. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't understand how us as a British colony, former British colony, cannot keep
Former.
the English.
How many, what did we say, an ethnically diverse community? What do you call an individual in that community?
Oh my gosh, wow.
All right, let's go with
Yes.
EMs.
Yes.
Or how many non-Chinese people do you know? Are there in Hong Kong? Do you know?
Oh, they're if you're talking including the domestic migrant workers, you're talking about close to 1 million, about 800,000.
About 6%? No, not even.
Yeah, just about 6 to 7%.
But then if you take away all of the foreign domestic workers, that must be at least half.
Yeah. But again, it's a growing community. I mean, if you look at the expat community, whenever I speak to the French, they're like, do you know how many of us are here? And it's quite I think 200,000. I mean, it should be the Brits first, but apparently they've taken over.
No, the French have exceeded the Brits.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, what's happened? Again, but you do see the diversity still there. You go to Central. In fact, now you go to Sham Shui Po. I do see.
See, I often tell people, look, Hong Kong is not an ethnically diverse region. I was going to say country, but we're a special administrative region.
Absolutely.
Because if you eliminate 3% of foreign domestic, so let's say 3% of us, people like us, are gainfully employed and working and contributing to the community and paying our taxes. That 3%, it's very little, isn't it?
But then in the whole grand scheme of things of what China, the Greater Bay Area and all that, I still think Hong Kong plays a really important global role. And, when you do see people talk about Hong Kong, they do see people as, they do see now we are part of that city as well. And I give credit again to the government for putting more and more representation, in advertising and billboards. I do see a little bit more of that.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, you know what? There's some change now.
There was a LegCo committee put together a few years ago. Is it still going?
So LegCo, LegCo is a complex, it's a political thing now. But I'm proud that there are 2 district councillors who are Nepalese and Pakistanis. Riz is in Kowloon City and Aruna
And you
is,
stood?
I stood, and I think that one is, a very...
What was that experience like?
I think I'm glad that there is now some voices in the political spectrum of society, because you do need that. As much as we're doing our work on the ground, you need to push things in the politics. Unfortunately for me, it was an experience, and I think politics...
Why you say unfortunately?
Because I lost, and of course it was a very political thing, and I think for me, I realized my role in society is where I do it on the ground.
Okay.
So I'm really happy now we have 2 district councillors who look like us, and they represent us in a really important
And which
space.
districts are they?
Riz is taking care of Kowloon City, and Aruna is Yao Chi Mon, and she's a Nepalese former flight attendant. Now she's taken over, very grassroots community. So yeah.
So no regrets on the
No
political...
regrets. I think I love what we're doing right now. Like this is fantastic to have conversations. Sometimes I think when you're into politics, you're in a very different mind frame. And I think here, what I do in NGOs and, where I get to meet people and see the difference I make. And I think as a social worker, that's such a privilege.
So what is your short-term ambition? If we do this again in another 2 years, what do you hope to have achieved?
Oh my gosh, Ruth, the next time I come back here, I'd love to say, hey, you know what? All the schools are now coming into the diversity hub.
Okay.
Now they understand. And by the way, they're calling us Hong Kongers now.
How can I help? I mean, there are more schools coming and establishing in Hong Kong this year, next
Please,
year.
we'd love for them to
An
incorporate
introduction.
this into their curriculum. Like a trip to Diversity Hub, 2 chunking mansions to break those stereotypes and understanding race, culture.
I loved it. I mean, I came
Yeah,
3 weeks
that's
ago.
correct. That's correct.
And look, I've got a history with chunking mansions.
Exactly,
I mean,
right.
Indian food and
Oh
me,
my
we're very,
gosh.
very good friends.
Right.
And I'm very familiar with chunking mansions, but actually when you took us around, I now know how to make masala
Oh
tea
my
in the
God.
proper way.
Oh, brilliant.
Inject those
Brilliant.
bubbles. Yeah, it was
Brilliant.
really interesting.
But
Mhm.
also, again, thank you for, also pushing the schools where, our community can actually have places. I think not a lot of people used to do that back in the day, but, I'm glad now the schools have this mindset. Yes, there should be a spot for some marginalized communities to have this education.
I wish there was more of that because I mean, I definitely see that, you said ethnic minorities, we often consider that to be more low income,
That's correct. That's
marginalized
correct.
families, but there's definitely a tier above which are finding it very, very difficult to access private education.
Right.
So that number is swelling. And the international schools are just getting more and more expensive and out of reach for a lot of families. Well, hopefully we can do more.
We should. We
So
will.
that was your 2 years, all schools. That's maybe a bit idealistic.
I hear you. I hear you. But social worker, you know how we are. We're just, keep pushing and keep pushing. And like I said, no one would have imagined Chungking being a tourist or a place that we could take tours for. No one would have imagined we have this diversity hub space. And I think another dream is that one day that the government will come in and say, you know what, we want to take this and make it into a more large scale, public, accessible space. And I think that would be amazing.
Right. Is there any representation in some of the major museums, like Hong Kong History Museum?
I think they've done a new renovation. I'm going to go check it out very soon. I want to see what they've done. I think a dedicated space that talks about communities like us, it's not that much. And I don't see that in school textbooks as well. So I think that's why I'm really proud of what we've achieved there. And I'm hoping, again, maybe the EDB will come in and say, you know what, we're going to incorporate your timeline into the school textbooks. And that'd be awesome.
Because you actually hinted, I think some of the textbooks have a very negative representation of ethnic minorities.
Years ago, I remember it was all over social media. It was like, a cook who cooks curry, and then it's a brown person or who's a domestic
Are
migrant
we
worker.
sure that's not still current?
Apparently no.
Okay.
But you're right. How crazy, in this modern times that we still have these kind of
stereotypes.
And imagine what it does for children.
When I was teaching adults many, many, many years ago in Hong Kong, I used to deliberately show images of different faces and ask the adults, where they're from. I said, here's a black man.
Yeah.
He's a doctor. Where's he from? He's from Africa. No, he's from Scotland.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
I couldn't comprehend.
Exactly.
But it's difficult. It's difficult. You're doing amazing work.
Thank you.
We will continue to support you in any way that we can, and hope more people will watch this and learn about your work. And for all of the schools in Greater Bay Area, it's only a short bus trip.
Hey, exactly.
To take a look around the Diversity Hub. So thanks for being here, Jeff.
Ruth.
It's been fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If today's episode sparked questions, or if you're ready for support with UK boarding school admissions, we're here to help. Reach out to us at www.topschoolsadmissions.com or follow the link in the show notes. Your child's exceptional UK boarding school educational journey starts with a conversation, so let's have a chat.